The forensic team knelt in the frozen dirt beneath a cottonwood tree just off Highway 550, their breath visible in the December air as they brushed away snow from what appeared to be fragments of fabric half buried in the earth. And the lead investigator's gloved hand paused over a small metallic object that caught the morning light. If you like stories like this, make sure to subscribe and like the video. The discovery came on December 27, 1995, 8 days after 22-year-old Jessica Renee Martinez had been reported missing from her apartment in Farmington, New Mexico. Jessica worked as a dental hygienist at a practice on Main Street and had last been seen leaving work on the evening of December 19, just as the town prepared for the Christmas holiday. Her Toyota Camry remained parked in her apartment complex lot, keys still inside her purse on the kitchen counter, but Jessica herself had vanished without explanation. Her roommate, Emily Vasquez, had returned from visiting family in Albuquerque on December 21 to find the apartment undisturbed except for Jessica's absence. The television was off, the bed made, a half-eaten sandwich wrapped in the refrigerator. Emily called Jessica's parents first, then the police. Farmington sits in the Four Corners region of New Mexico, a high desert town where winter temperatures drop below freezing and occasional snowfall dusts the mesas and arroyos. In December 1995, the town had a population of roughly 40,000, supported by oil and gas industries, and serving as a regional hub for the surrounding San Juan County. Jessica had grown up in the smaller community of Aztec, 15 miles to the northeast, and moved to Farmington after completing her dental hygiene certification at San Juan College. She was described by coworkers and friends as reliable, punctual, and cautious. She had no history of disappearing, no troubled relationships that anyone knew of, and no reason to simply walk away from her life. The Farmington Police Department began their investigation on December 21 when Emily filed the missing person report. Detective Mark Holloway, a 14-year veteran of the department, was assigned as lead investigator. He started with the basics, interviewing Jessica's coworkers, friends, and family, checking her bank records, and reviewing her recent activities. Jessica's last known movements placed her leaving the dental office at approximately 5:45 in the evening on December 19. She had mentioned to a coworker that she planned to stop at Albertson's grocery store on her way home to pick up items for a small gathering she was hosting on December 23. The coworker, Linda Herrera, recalled Jessica seemed in good spirits and was looking forward to the time off work. Detective Holloway obtained surveillance footage from the Albertsons on East Main Street. The grainy black and white recording showed Jessica entering the store at 6:12 in the evening and leaving at 6:39 with 2 plastic bags. She walked through the parking lot and appeared to place the bags in the trunk of her Camry. The footage showed her getting into the driver's seat, but the camera angle did not capture her departure. Store employees remembered nothing unusual about that evening. December 19 had been a busy shopping day with crowds preparing for Christmas. Jessica's Camry was found in her apartment parking space 2 days later, exactly where it should have been. The groceries were not inside. The trunk was empty except for a spare tire and jumper cables. Detective Holloway arranged for the vehicle to be processed by the New Mexico State Police Crime Lab. Technicians found Jessica's fingerprints throughout the interior, along with partials from Emily Vasquez, consistent with the roommates sharing occasional rides. No foreign prints were identified. No blood, no signs of struggle. The car appeared entirely normal. Interviews with neighbors at Jessica's apartment complex yielded little. Most residents had been traveling or focused on holiday activities. One neighbor, Richard Caldwell, recalled seeing Jessica's car in the lot on the evening of December 19, but could not specify a time. Another neighbor reported hearing no unusual sounds or disturbances. Jessica's apartment showed no signs of forced entry. Her mail sat unopened on the counter. Her winter coat hung in the closet. Her wallet, containing her driver's license and credit cards, remained inside her purse. The only item that appeared missing was Jessica herself. Detective Holloway expanded the investigation. He contacted Jessica's family in Aztec. Her parents, Robert and Sandra Martinez, were devastated and cooperative. They insisted Jessica had no enemies, no secret life, no hidden troubles. She called them twice a week, visited every few weekends, and had spoken to her mother on December 18 about plans to drive to Aztec on Christmas Eve. Robert Martinez provided names of Jessica's high school friends and former boyfriends. Holloway tracked down each one. None had seen or spoken to Jessica in months. Her most recent romantic relationship had ended amicably nearly a year earlier. The Farmington Police Department issued a press release on December 23. Local television stations in Albuquerque picked up the story. Jessica's photograph appeared on the evening news, a young woman with dark hair, brown eyes, and a warm smile. Tips began coming in, but most led nowhere. Someone thought they saw Jessica at a gas station in Durango, Colorado, but the time frame did not match. Another caller reported a woman matching her description hitchhiking near Shiprock, but follow-up investigation found no corroboration. Detective Holloway sifted through each lead methodically, aware that the first 72 hours in a missing person case are critical, and those hours had already passed. On December 27, a rancher named Thomas Begay was checking fence lines on his property approximately 18 miles north of Farmington, near the junction of Highway 550 and County Road 3900. The area consists of rolling terrain with scattered juniper and piñon trees, wide stretches of sagebrush, and deep arroyos carved by seasonal runoff. Snow from a storm 2 days earlier covered the ground in patches. Begay noticed tire tracks leading off the highway onto a dirt access road used occasionally by oil field workers. Curious, he followed the tracks and found an area where the ground had been disturbed. He saw what looked like torn plastic bags partially buried in the dirt beneath a large cottonwood tree. Begay called the San Juan County Sheriff's Office. Deputies arrived within the hour. They secured the scene and contacted the Farmington Police Department. Detective Holloway drove out immediately. The site was isolated, visible from the highway only if someone knew where to look. The tire tracks had been obscured by wind and snow, but the disturbed earth beneath the cottonwood was clear. Crime scene technicians began excavating carefully. Within the first hour, they uncovered 2 plastic grocery bags, torn and soiled, containing spoiled food items. Beneath the bags, they found a woman's shoe, a Nike running shoe size 7, white with blue trim. Nearby, they discovered a leather wallet containing identification cards and $23 in cash. The driver's license belonged to Jessica Renee Martinez. The excavation continued through the afternoon. Technicians worked in a grid pattern, sifting soil and debris. They found a second shoe, scraps of clothing, and several small metallic objects that appeared to be jewelry. By evening, they had uncovered human remains, partial and scattered, buried roughly 2 feet below the surface. The condition of the remains suggested exposure to the elements and possible animal activity. Dr. Ellen Cho, the medical investigator from the New Mexico office of the medical investigator, was called to the scene. She supervised the careful removal of the remains and coordinated transport to the OMI facility in Albuquerque for autopsy and identification. The discovery transformed the investigation from a missing person case to a homicide. Detective Holloway established a command post at the Farmington Police Department and assembled a task force. The San Juan County Sheriff's Office, New Mexico State Police, and FBI field agents from Albuquerque offered resources and personnel. The site where Jessica's remains were found was processed over the following 3 days. Technicians collected soil samples, photographed tire impressions, and searched a radius of 100 yards for additional evidence. They found no weapon, no shell casings, no clear indicators of how Jessica had died. Dr. Cho completed the autopsy on December 30. The remains were positively identified as Jessica Renee Martinez through dental records. The cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation, based on fractures to the hyoid bone, a small horseshoe-shaped bone in the neck that often breaks during strangulation. Dr. Cho noted that decomposition and animal activity had complicated the examination, but the hyoid fracture was definitive. Toxicology tests showed no drugs or alcohol in Jessica's system. Time of death was estimated to have occurred within hours of her last confirmed sighting on December 19. Detective Holloway reviewed the evidence with the task force on January 2, 1996. The case now centered on reconstructing Jessica's movements between leaving the Albertsons parking lot at approximately 6:40 in the evening on December 19 and the disposal of her body at the rural site off Highway 550. The distance between the grocery store and the burial location was roughly 20 miles, a drive of about 25 minutes under normal conditions. The groceries found at the scene matched items Jessica had purchased, confirmed through store receipts. Her car had been returned to her apartment parking lot, keys and purse left inside her residence. This suggested the killer had access to her apartment or had forced Jessica to provide that access. The task force began constructing a timeline. Jessica left work at 5:45. She arrived at Albertsons at 6:12. She departed the store at 6:39. Somewhere between the grocery store parking lot and her apartment, Jessica encountered her killer. The most logical scenario involved an abduction from the parking lot itself or an interception during the short drive home. Jessica's apartment was located on East Apache Street, less than 2 miles from the Albertsons. The route would have taken her along Main Street, then north on Browning Parkway. Detective Holloway drove the route multiple times, noting businesses, traffic patterns, and potential witness locations. Investigators re-interviewed employees at businesses along the route. A clerk at a convenience store on Browning Parkway recalled seeing a dark-colored pickup truck parked near the store on the evening of December 19, around 7 o'clock. The clerk could not provide a make or model, but remembered the truck because it had remained parked for an unusually long time with the engine running. The convenience store was located 3 blocks from Jessica's apartment. Detective Holloway considered the possibility that the killer had followed Jessica from the grocery store, forced her off the road or confronted her near her apartment, and then transported her to the burial site. The FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit provided a preliminary profile. The crime suggested planning and knowledge of the victim's routines. The choice of burial location indicated familiarity with the area, someone who knew the rural roads and isolated spots where a body could be concealed. The return of Jessica's car to her apartment suggested an attempt to delay discovery and create confusion about her whereabouts. The strangulation method pointed to a personal, hands-on killing, often associated with perpetrators who knew their victims. The profile described a male, likely between 25 and 45 years old, with ties to the Farmington area, possibly someone who worked in the oil and gas industry or had reason to travel rural roads regularly. Detective Holloway focused on individuals in Jessica's life who fit aspects of the profile. He re-examined former boyfriends, coworkers, and acquaintances. He obtained phone records for Jessica's home and work lines, looking for patterns or unexpected contacts. Nothing stood out. Jessica's social circle was small and stable. Her coworkers at the dental practice were all women except for the dentist, Dr. Raymond Foster, who was 62 years old and had been interviewed extensively. Dr. Foster had left work before Jessica on December 19 and had a confirmed alibi for the evening, having attended a church service with his wife. The investigation expanded to include individuals with criminal histories in San Juan County. Detectives reviewed records of sex offenders, individuals with violent priors, and anyone recently released from prison. They cross-referenced vehicle registrations for dark-colored pickup trucks. The list was extensive. Farmington and the surrounding communities had thousands of trucks matching the general description. Detectives began the tedious process of interviewing owners and checking alibis. On January 8, a tip came through the department's hotline. A woman named Patricia Ruiz called to report that her ex-husband, Vincent Ruiz, had been acting strangely around the time of Jessica's disappearance. Patricia and Vincent had divorced in 1994 after 8 years of marriage. Vincent worked as a field technician for an oil services company and drove a black Ford F-150. Patricia stated that Vincent had mentioned knowing Jessica from the dental office where he had been a patient. She also reported that on December 20, Vincent had come to her house unannounced, agitated, and asking to borrow cleaning supplies and a shovel. Patricia had refused and asked him to leave. She had not thought much of the interaction until seeing news reports about Jessica's case. Detective Holloway brought Vincent Ruiz in for questioning on January 10. Ruiz was 34 years old, a lifelong resident of Farmington. He agreed to speak with detectives and appeared cooperative. Holloway conducted the interview at the police department, with another detective present. Ruiz confirmed he had been a patient at the dental practice where Jessica worked. He had an appointment in October 1995 for a cleaning. He remembered Jessica as his hygienist but claimed he had no further interaction with her. When asked about his whereabouts on December 19, Ruiz stated he had worked until 5 in the afternoon at a well site near Bloomfield, then driven home to his apartment on the west side of Farmington. He claimed he spent the evening alone, watching television. He could provide no witnesses to corroborate his account. Holloway asked about the visit to Patricia's house on December 20. Ruiz admitted he had stopped by but denied acting strangely. He said he needed the shovel to dig out a fence post at his apartment complex. He denied requesting cleaning supplies. The interview continued for 2 hours. Ruiz maintained his story, showing no obvious signs of deception but also displaying a certain nervousness that Holloway noted. At the conclusion of the interview, Ruiz agreed to allow a search of his apartment and vehicle. Detectives obtained written consent. The search of Vincent Ruiz's apartment was conducted on January 11. The residence was a small one-bedroom unit in a complex on West Main Street, about 3 miles from Jessica's apartment. Detectives found the living space cluttered but not unusual. They collected items for forensic analysis: clothing, shoes, bedding, and a hamper of laundry. In the bathroom, they found several bottles of bleach and heavy-duty cleaning products, more than would typically be needed for routine housekeeping. In the bedroom closet, they discovered a shovel with dirt still clinging to the blade. The dirt appeared dry and compacted. Ruiz's truck was processed at the police impound lot. The black Ford F-150 was in fair condition, with moderate wear consistent with regular use in oil field work. Technicians vacuumed the interior, collecting fibers, hair, and soil samples. They examined the truck bed, which showed signs of recent cleaning. Luminol testing revealed faint traces of what might be blood in the bed liner, though the amount was insufficient for definitive testing. Soil samples from the truck bed, and the shovel were sent to the state lab for comparison with soil from the burial site. Detective Holloway waited for forensic results while continuing to build a circumstantial case. He obtained Vincent Ruiz's employment records and spoke with his supervisor at the oil services company. The supervisor confirmed Ruiz had worked on December 19, but noted that Ruiz had left the job site around 4:30, earlier than his usual departure time. Ruiz had logged out at 5, but coworkers recalled him leaving before then. This created a discrepancy in Ruiz's timeline. If he left the well site at 4:30, he could have been in Farmington by 5:15, giving him time to be near the Albertsons when Jessica finished shopping. Holloway interviewed additional witnesses who might have seen Ruiz's truck. A resident living near Jessica's apartment complex remembered seeing a black pickup parked on the street on the evening of December 19. The resident could not provide a specific time or a license plate, but recalled the truck because it was parked in a no-parking zone near a fire hydrant. The location was 2 houses down from Jessica's building. The resident had considered calling to report the parking violation, but had not followed through. The forensic analysis took 3 weeks. On February 1, the state lab reported findings. Soil samples from Vincent Ruiz's shovel and truck bed matched the soil composition at the burial site off Highway 550. The match was not absolute, as soil in the region shares similar mineral content, but the samples were consistent in terms of clay composition, pH level, and trace organic material. More significantly, fiber analysis revealed that synthetic fibers collected from the truck bed matched fibers from the clothing Jessica had been wearing when her remains were found. The fibers were from a polyester blend sweater, a specific weave and dye lot that was commercially available but not common. Detective Holloway presented the evidence to the San Juan County District Attorney's Office on February 5, 1996. The case consisted of circumstantial evidence, soil and fiber matches, timeline inconsistencies, suspicious behavior following the murder, and proximity to the victim. The district attorney, Sarah Mendoza, reviewed the materials and concluded there was sufficient probable cause for an arrest warrant. On February 7, Vincent Ruiz was arrested at his workplace and charged with first-degree murder, kidnapping, and tampering with evidence. He was held without bond at the San Juan County Detention Center. The arrest made front-page news in the Farmington Daily Times and received coverage from Albuquerque television stations. The community reacted with a mixture of relief and disbelief. Vincent Ruiz was not a prominent figure, but he was known in certain circles as a regular at local bars and a competent worker in the oil fields. Some of his former coworkers expressed shock, describing him as quiet and unremarkable. Others noted that Ruiz had become increasingly isolated following his divorce and had displayed a temper on occasion. Patricia Ruiz provided a statement to the press, saying she had feared her ex-husband for years and felt vindicated by the arrest. Ruiz maintained his innocence. His court-appointed attorney, David Montoya, argued that the evidence was weak and entirely circumstantial. Montoya challenged the soil and fiber analysis, noting that such evidence could not definitively place Ruiz at the scene. He emphasized the lack of eyewitnesses, the absence of DNA evidence, and the fact that no murder weapon had been recovered. The defense suggested that someone else could have used Ruiz's truck or planted evidence to frame him. Montoya filed motions to suppress evidence obtained during the apartment and vehicle searches, claiming the consent was coerced. The motions were denied. As the case moved toward trial, Detective Holloway continued investigating. He sought additional witnesses who might have seen Ruiz on December 19. In March, a witness came forward, James Keller, a truck driver who frequently traveled Highway 550, contacted the police after reading about the case. Keller stated that on the evening of December 19, around 8 o'clock, he had seen a black Ford pickup parked on the shoulder near County Road 3900. He remembered because the location was unusual for a vehicle to stop, and the truck's headlights were on. Keller could not positively identify the truck as belonging to Ruiz, but the make and model matched. He had not come forward earlier because he had not connected the sighting to Jessica's disappearance until the arrest was publicized. Holloway also uncovered additional information about Vincent Ruiz's history with women. 2 former girlfriends agreed to speak with investigators. Both described Ruiz as controlling and possessive. One woman, Angela Torres, recounted an incident in 1993 when Ruiz had followed her to her workplace after she tried to end their relationship. Torres had filed a restraining order, which Ruiz had violated once before it expired. The incidents painted a picture of a man with obsessive tendencies and difficulty accepting rejection. The prosecution built a theory of the crime. Vincent Ruiz had become fixated on Jessica Martinez after his appointment at the dental office in October 1995. He began following her, learning her routines and habits. On December 19, he waited near the Albertsons, knowing Jessica shopped there regularly. He followed her from the parking lot, possibly forcing her off the road or confronting her near her apartment. He abducted Jessica, drove her to the remote location off Highway 550, and killed her by strangulation. He buried her body hastily, returned to Farmington, and drove her car back to her apartment to create the appearance that she had arrived home safely. He used her keys to place her purse inside the apartment, then walked back to where he had left his own truck. The prosecution acknowledged gaps in the timeline and the lack of direct evidence, but argued that the totality of circumstances pointed unmistakably to Ruiz's guilt. The trial began on September 16, 1996, in the San Juan County Courthouse. The proceedings lasted 3 weeks. The prosecution presented forensic evidence, witness testimony, and Ruiz's inconsistent statements. Dr. Ellen Cho testified about the cause of death and the condition of Jessica's remains. Forensic analysts explained the soil and fiber matches. Detective Holloway walked the jury through the investigation step by step. Patricia Ruiz testified about her ex-husband's behavior in the days following the murder. James Keller described seeing the pickup truck on Highway 550. The defense focused on reasonable doubt. David Montoya argued that the soil match was meaningless given the commonality of soil types in the region. He pointed out that the fiber evidence could not prove when or how the fibers transferred to Ruiz's truck. He challenged the credibility of Patricia Ruiz, suggesting she had ulterior motives for implicating her ex-husband. He emphasized that no physical evidence directly linked Ruiz to the act of killing Jessica Martinez. No fingerprints, no DNA, no murder weapon, no confession. Vincent Ruiz chose not to testify. His demeanor throughout the trial remained impassive. He sat beside his attorney, occasionally whispering but showing little emotion. Jessica's family attended every day of the trial. Robert and Sandra Martinez sat in the front row, their faces etched with grief. Friends from Jessica's workplace came to support the family. The courtroom was full, reflecting the community's investment in the case. On October 7, 1996, the jury deliberated for 11 hours before reaching a verdict. They found Vincent Ruiz guilty of first-degree murder, kidnapping, and tampering with evidence. The courtroom erupted in quiet tears and embraces. Jessica's mother collapsed in her husband's arms. Ruiz showed no reaction as the verdict was read. Judge Thomas Begay thanked the jury for their service and scheduled sentencing for November 15. At sentencing, The prosecution requested life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The defense argued for a lesser sentence, citing Ruiz's lack of prior violent convictions. Jessica's father delivered a victim impact statement. He spoke of his daughter's kindness, her future stolen, and the unbearable pain of her absence. Judge Begay sentenced Vincent Ruiz to life in prison without parole, plus consecutive sentences for kidnapping and tampering with evidence, ensuring Ruiz would never be released. Vincent Ruiz was transferred to the New Mexico State Penitentiary in Santa Fe to begin serving his sentence. He filed an appeal in 1997, arguing ineffective assistance of counsel and challenging the admissibility of the forensic evidence. The New Mexico Court of Appeals reviewed the case and denied the appeal in 1998, finding no reversible errors in the trial proceedings. Ruiz filed a second appeal in 2001, this time focusing on the consent search of his apartment and vehicle. The appeal was again denied. He exhausted his legal options by 2003 and remained incarcerated without further challenges. The resolution of the case brought a measure of closure to Jessica's family, though the pain of her loss never fully subsided. Robert and Sandra Martinez established a scholarship fund in Jessica's name at San Juan College, providing financial assistance to students pursuing careers in healthcare. The scholarship has supported dozens of students over the years, keeping Jessica's memory alive in a tangible way. Her friends from the dental practice held an annual memorial gathering every December, meeting at a park in Farmington to share stories and remember the young woman whose life was cut short. Detective Mark Holloway retired from the Farmington Police Department in 2008 after 32 years of service. He considered the Jessica Martinez case one of the most challenging and significant investigations of his career. In interviews given after his retirement, Holloway emphasized the importance of meticulous evidence collection, persistence in following leads, and the willingness to wait for forensic results even when pressure mounted to make quick arrests. He credited the collaborative effort between multiple agencies and the courage of witnesses like Patricia Ruiz for making the conviction possible. The case also prompted changes in how missing person investigations were handled in San Juan County. The police department implemented new protocols for rapid response to missing person reports, particularly involving young women. They improved coordination with the New Mexico State Police and established better systems for sharing information across jurisdictions. The tragic outcome of Jessica's case served as a reminder that delayed action could mean the difference between rescue and recovery. In the years following the conviction, additional information about Vincent Ruiz emerged. Investigators in Colorado contacted the Farmington Police Department in 2002 regarding an unsolved missing person case from 1992. A young woman named Teresa McKinney had disappeared from Durango, Colorado, under circumstances that bore similarities to Jessica's case. McKinney had last been seen leaving work and was found deceased 3 weeks later in a rural area. Ruiz had lived in Durango briefly in 1991 and 1992, working for the same oil services company. Detectives attempted to link Ruiz to McKinney's death, but the evidence was insufficient. The case remained officially unsolved, though some investigators privately believed Ruiz might have been responsible. Jessica Martinez's case became part of the curriculum at the New Mexico Law Enforcement Academy, used as a teaching example of how circumstantial evidence can be effectively assembled to secure a conviction. Instructors emphasized the importance of building a complete timeline, using forensic science appropriately, and understanding behavioral patterns of offenders. The case illustrated that successful prosecution did not always require DNA or video evidence, but rather a comprehensive presentation of facts that left no reasonable alternative explanation. The community of Farmington slowly healed, though Jessica's death left a lasting impact. Residents became more aware of personal safety, more vigilant about reporting suspicious activity, and more supportive of victims' families navigating the criminal justice system. The case fostered conversations about violence against women and the importance of recognizing warning signs in relationships. Local organizations began offering self-defense classes and safety awareness programs, initiatives that continued for many years. Patricia Ruiz moved away from Farmington in 1998, seeking distance from the painful memories associated with her ex-husband's crimes. She relocated to Arizona and rebuilt her life, maintaining periodic contact with Jessica's family. She expressed deep regret that she had not acted sooner on her suspicions about Vincent's behavior, though investigators assured her that her testimony had been crucial to securing justice. Patricia's willingness to come forward despite personal fear stood as an example of civic courage that helped bring a dangerous individual to justice. The burial site off Highway 550, where Jessica's body was discovered, became a place of quiet remembrance. A small wooden cross was placed near the Cottonwood tree, maintained by anonymous visitors over the years. Occasionally, fresh flowers appeared at the site, left by people who never knew Jessica but felt moved by her story. The land remained undeveloped, a stark stretch of high desert where the wind moved through sagebrush and the mountains stood distant on the horizon. Jessica's case was officially closed following Vincent Ruiz's conviction, but it remained open in the hearts of those who knew her. Her parents aged with the weight of their loss, finding solace in their faith and in the support of their community. They spoke publicly about Jessica only on rare occasions, preferring to remember her privately and to honor her through the scholarship that bore her name. They never visited the burial site, finding it too painful, but they kept photographs of Jessica throughout their home, images of a young woman smiling, vibrant, full of promise. The investigation files, several boxes worth of reports, photographs, and evidence logs, were archived in the basement of the Farmington Police Department. They remained accessible for review, part of the permanent record of a case that demonstrated both the fragility of life and the persistence of justice. Detective Holloway's handwritten notes, the forensic analyses, the witness statements, all formed a chronicle of how a community refused to let a young woman's death go unanswered. Vincent Ruiz aged in prison, becoming a fixture in the general population, working in the prison library and keeping largely to himself. He maintained his innocence in conversations with other inmates, though few believed him. He received no visitors after 2005. His parents had passed away and his siblings severed contact. He existed in the confined routine of incarceration. A man whose actions on a December evening in 1995 had irrevocably altered multiple lives and ended one with terrible finality. The snows still fall on Farmington each winter, covering the mesas and the quiet streets where Jessica once lived. The seasons turn as they always have, marking time in a place where ordinary people go about ordinary lives, carrying the knowledge that evil sometimes walks among them, and that justice, though imperfect and slow, can still prevail.